Okay, so this is feeding the starter. I know what my jar weighs, and I know I have 150 grams of starter right now. So I'm going to add 150 grams of flour and 150 grams of spring water. That's going to make my jar probably fuller than I want, but that's okay. I'll do something with some of the discard. Okay, 150 flour, and then I'm gonna tare it so it goes back to 0 grams. And then I need 150 grams of water. Okay. So that's a 1-1-1 ratio. 150 starter, 150 flour, and 150 water. So I'm just going to incorporate it and scrape the sides in as I go. And we'll see how full my jar is. We want to have at least enough space in the jar for the starter to double, maybe even a little bit more. If there's not enough space for it to double, your starter will overflow from the jar. So we'll see what we have, because that's kind of a lot of starter for right now. Okay, get the good mix. Kind of get some tension going in the starter. You can see in there the consistency. Okay, so that's a good mix. I'm going to scrape the sides, try to get as much off the sides as I can. Okay, I'm just going to kind of scrape any excess down in there. Okay, so now I'm going to take my rubber band and I'm going to put it at the height of my starter, so you can kind of see, got it right there. And I've got barely enough room for this starter to double, but I'm going to risk it for the biscuit. And I'm going to put my lid on, and I'm just going to let it sit on the counter until my starter has doubled. And that's, once it's doubled, that's when I'm going to make my dough. Okay, now we are going to make our dough, and I'm using a glass bowl. It's a little bit heavy, so depending on how good your scale is, you're going to want to pay attention to your weight down here, because sometimes mine errors out because my bowl is so heavy. So if you keep an eye on your weight, you might have to do some recalculating, which I have to do from time to time. So I'm going to tare it, bring it back to 0 grams. And you can see my starter, it's all the way at the top. It doubled. So it's ready to go. So I am going to put 150 grams of my starter. Okay, so I got 150 grams. put, or actually I need 125. Sorry, I had the wrong amount in there. Let me get some out of there. See, I wasn't looking at my recipe or paying attention. Okay, so 125 grams of my starter. Perfect. And then I want to have 325 grams of my room temperature water. So I'm going to tare this out back to 0. And I'm going to add the 325 grams. Okay, 326, that's close enough. And I'm going to tare it out so it goes back to 0. Just going to mix up this water and starter a tiny bit. You don't have to, it's not mandatory. Just to get it incorporated a little bit. Okay, now I want 500 grams of unbleached flour. So this is where my scale sometimes goes kind of crazy because it gets too heavy. So keep your eye on the number because you might have to restart it at some point, so you want to know how much you have. Okay, so I need 500. Okay, 508, let me take some out of there. Okay. Okay, good enough. Now I need 12 grams of salt, so I'm going to tare it back to 0 again. And I'm going to get 12 grams of salt. Okay, there we go. Those are our ingredients. We don't need our scale. And we're just gonna mix this all together until it incorporates to form a shaggy dough. And depending which flour you end up using, different flours have different protein levels in them. And so that's where it really comes into play as far as what your dough ends up looking like, because you may need more or less water. So as you start doing these recipes, you know, you can alter your recipe a little bit as you go. If you find out, you know, later on you need to add more flour or more water the next time you try the recipe. For the first time, I would definitely just make it this way and see how it turns out, rather than trying to like add water or flour during the process. Right now it looks like a pretty dry dough, but it's really not as dry as it actually looks. It's wetter than it looks. I just can't tell yet because of the way things incorporate. So you just want to kind of try to get it mixed together as best you can. Okay, got everything off the sides. come together nice. Don't have a lot sticking. Okay. So now we got our dough mixed. I'm going to cover it with some saran wrap just so that nothing gets in it. And we are just going to let this sit on the counter for at least an hour. So it doesn't look like much now. There's not like a nice round shape to it. It's kind of lumpy and crazy looking, but we just really want it to relax a little bit. It might get a little bit bigger, it might not. We want to let it sit though for at least an hour. Okay, now our dough's been sitting for an hour, and so I'm just going to take off the wrap, and we're going to do our first set of stretch and folds. So you want to make sure your hands are wet because your dough will be sticky and it'll stick to your hands. So you want to kind of scrape along the back to get the back of it up, and you just kind of want to lift it up and jiggle it. It'll come pretty easily, and then fold it over on itself and then do a quarter turn. You don't want to pull it up so high that the dough rips. You just want to kind of go up as high as it goes naturally before it feels like it's stretched too far. And you can see there's like a little bit of dough on my fingers, and that's normal. So we're going to do this like 4 times. So that's number 3, and then quarter turn again, and we're going to do another stretch up and then fold it over on itself. So we did that like 4 times, and we're just going to put our plastic wrap back on, and we're going to let the dough rest for another 30 minutes before we do our next set of stretch and folds. Okay, it's been 30 minutes, and so now we're going to do our second set of stretch and folds. Again, we want to have wet hands, and we're going to reach towards the back of the bowl and just pull the dough up as far as it'll go without ripping, and then fold it over and turn it a quarter. Fold it over. You'll realize with each turn and pull, your dough gets like a little bit tighter, and that's the gluten in the dough strengthening. So there, we've got 4 stretch and folds for 4 turns, and we're just going to cover it back up, and we're going to let it sit for another 30 minutes before we do our next set of stretch and folds. And again, you'll see just a little bit of dough on the fingers, which is totally normal. You don't want to wash that off in the sink. Just wipe it off with a paper towel. And that's it. Okay. We are on to our 3rd set of stretch and folds. Got our wet hands going in the back and pulling it up. You see how the dough is looking more shiny now and less shaggy? And that's because of the gluten. And again, with each one of these quarter turns you do, you're going to find that the dough gets stiffer and will stretch out less than the one you did before. So that's barely stretching up. It's the gluten is getting really strong now. So I usually do 4 sets of these stretch and folds, but I probably could skip the last one, but I'm gonna go ahead and do 4 because I usually do 4 and it turns out good. So I'm gonna let this sit for another 30 minutes, and we'll do our last set of stretch and folds. Okay, this is gonna be our last set of stretch and folds, getting our hands wet. And we're gonna go in, you can see it's so nice and glossy now. Fold it over, quarter turn, stretch and fold. And again, it gets tight and more tight. It's because of all this good gluten that we've developed. Okay, So now that was our last stretch and fold. And now what we're gonna do, you can see kind of the size of it. We're gonna let this sit until it doubles in size. So it's gonna be different for everybody's house because it depends on how warm your house is. But essentially you wanna cover it back up and just wait for it to double in size. It could be an hour, it could be 3. But we'll come back and take a look at it. And you'll see my hands are pretty clean now. The dough is a lot less sticky than it was when I did the first set of stretch and folds. So it's looking really good. Okay, so my dough has been sitting on the counter for about 2.5 hours. It's about doubled in size. It's kind of hard to see in the video, but there's a little bit of bubbling around. And if you look at the side, you can see that there's like bubbles in here. And underneath the dough, we got a bunch of bubbles. And the dough pulls away from the side of the bowl pretty easily. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna turn it out onto a floured surface. And we are gonna shape our dough. Okay. And it'll eventually kind of fall out on its own. All in one piece. Just like that. And then you want to make sure that your hands have a little bit of flour in them so they don't stick to the dough. But you want to kind of make a little bit of a rectangle here with your dough. And it's going to feel a little bit tacky, but not sticky. Like you're not going to get all kinds of stickiness on your hands. And then we're going to kind of fold it in thirds like this. And then you're just going to roll it up. Just like this. Okay. And then you want to kind of make it into a ball by pushing with this hand and pulling back and tucking at the same time. So you're pushing, pulling, and tucking. Pushing, pulling, and tucking. Pushing, pulling, and tucking. Until you have a nice smooth edge to your dough and you feel some good tension on the top of your dough. Doesn't take too long, just a couple of these. Maybe done like, I don't know, 10 of these maybe. Okay, and then we'll just take our cling wrap and just put that over there. We're gonna let it sit for 20 more minutes like that. And then we're gonna do our final shaping and put it in the fridge. Okay, so it has been about 20 minutes and I'm gonna do my final reshape and then I'm gonna get my dough into the banneton, but I'm gonna put some rice flour into my banneton so that the dough doesn't stick when it's in the refrigerator. So just kind of sprinkle some in there. Like this, kind of get it around everywhere. So it kind of looks like that. Kind of shake it around. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so now take this off. And we'll do our final shaping. Get some flour on my hands. And again, we're still doing that same kind of push-pull thing. If your hands get sticky, just put a little bit of flour on them. Not too much though. Okay, we're just doing the push, turn, pull kind of thing, just to kind of create some surface tension on the dough. Like that, you can see there's like little air bubbles coming around. That's good. That's when your dough cooks, you're gonna have a lot of those dough pockets in there. So here we go. I got a nice tight ball, and I've got my banneton ready. So you could use that little bench scraper thing that comes in the kit if you want to, but I just use my hand. You just pick up your dough like that, and then this nice domed side, you're gonna plop it right down in the middle. And some people like to do like these twisting things where you like smush the dough together. I don't necessarily really do that. To me, as long as it kind of looks good, it looks good. And then you just take your plastic wrap just like that, just to kind of cover it up. Actually, I'm gonna put like just a little bit of rice flour on the top because my dough is a tiny bit sticky, and this way it won't stick to the plastic wrap overnight. But I'm gonna put my plastic wrap just like that. And I'm gonna take a plastic bag like this and just close it up, and then I'm gonna stick it in the refrigerator overnight, and that's gonna be the cold ferment. And we'll take it out in the morning and get it ready to bake. Okay, so it is the next morning, and my dough has been sitting in the refrigerator in this plastic bag overnight, and I have preheated my oven to 450. I also have a pizza stone in my oven, which I like to keep in there because I think it helps to prevent the bottom of the crust becoming too stiff, but you don't have to have a pizza stone in there. You could also put a cookie sheet in there underneath whatever you're gonna cook the bread in. It just kind of helps to disperse the heat. So it's optional though. So I'm gonna take my bread out of the bag, and I'm gonna take this plastic off here. I'm gonna dust it with a little bit of flour. Nani kind of squished my dough by accident in the fridge last night, so hopefully it doesn't do anything bad, but we'll find out when we bake it. Okay, I take a little piece of parchment paper here, just lay it across the dough like that, and turn it over. And then you just basically pull up on the banneton like that. And there you have your dough. So then I'm gonna take a little bit more of this rice flour. This is what I've been putting on it, rice flour. I put it on the top and just kind of spread it around so I can get something nice to work with for my designs. Like that. Okay. And then I'm gonna take my blade. Remember, try not to cut yourself. And you can do whatever you want. You can do like little designs. I usually do some kind of like a, I don't know, twig or leaf looking something or other. You get fancy however you want to, basically. And then you do want to do like a deeper, what they call expansion score, which is like a little bit deeper, so it allows room for the bread to expand once it's cooking inside, just like that. Okay, now my bread oven or Dutch oven has been in the oven this whole time, preheating with the oven at 450. That way it's going to be hot when I put the bread in. So you can see my pizza stone in there. I'm going to take this out. Up real quick, and then I'm just going to take my bread and I'm going to put it right in the pizza oven just like that, and I'm going to put my top back on. I'm going to cook it just like that on 450 for 35 minutes. And then we'll come back after 35 minutes. Okay, it has been 35 minutes. So I'm gonna open the oven and I'm gonna take off the lid. allow the bread to brown up. This is what it kind of looks like right now before I took the lid off. We're gonna let that bake for, oops, dropped my phone. We're gonna let that bake for 15 more minutes and then take it out. Okay, it's been the last 15 minutes. I'm gonna take my bread out. Oh, and she's gorgeous. Look how pretty she is. Absolutely stunning. Stunning, stunning. And then I just take her out of the bread oven and remove the parchment paper. I think next time I'm going to try without parchment paper. I think if you put a lot of rice flour on the bottom, it won't stick. I want to try that. Anyways, there you go. You did it.